I knew it the moment I walked into the room. They'd already decided I didn't belong there. You can feel that kind of rejection in your skin, like standing too close to a flame that won't let you burn but also won't let you leave unscorched. They called it a family dinner, but I knew what it really was, a ritual shaming disguised as a meal. They had the forks, the wine, and the condescension ready. What they didn't know was, I had something too. And in less than an hour, my phone would ring, and the balance of power in this family would never be the same again. Before we dive in, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. We're excited to connect with all of you, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing content. Now back to the story. When you grow up a Carter in Boston, there are rules. You're born with a pedigree, groomed for prestige, and expected to choose a career that's both respectable and familiar. Law, medicine, politics. Something with an office that smells like oak and carries a framed Harvard degree on the wall. Anything outside of that narrow lane? Well, that just meant you were the family's embarrassment. Guess who drew the short straw? I'm Maya Carter, middle child, invisible daughter, and apparently the cautionary tale my siblings use at cocktail parties to make themselves look better. I wore black slacks and a silk blouse to the dinner. Nothing flashy. I pulled my curls back, kept my makeup minimal. I wasn't there to dazzle, just to survive. I'd already rehearsed a handful of polite smiles, non-answers, and exit strategies on the Uber ride over. When I walked into Lou Sable, our go-to family meeting spot in Beacon Hill, the table was already set. Long, linen-covered, candlelit. One of those places where the waiters remember your drink order and your grandmother's middle name. My brother, Graham, was already seated at the head of the table like he owned the air we were breathing. His Rolex glinted every time he moved his hand to check the time, like he was counting down the seconds until he could stop pretending to care about my existence. Ava, my younger sister, sat next to him with a green juice in front of her, though she wasn't drinking it. She wore a peach silk dress that probably cost as much as my laptop and had those glossy curls influencers get sponsored for. Maya! Ava greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You came. I was invited, I replied, matching her tone. Graham stood up halfway, gave me a brief, firm hug, the kind you'd give to a stranger's wife at a wedding. Dad, seated across from Graham, nodded in my direction. You're late. His voice always had the weight of a gavel, even in casual conversation. I'm actually right on time, I said, slipping into my seat. 5 minutes late is late, he countered, before waving the waiter over. Just like that, I was dismissed. The dinner hadn't even started, and I was already on the defensive. The Carters don't believe in small talk. By the time the appetizers arrived, we were knee-deep in passive-aggressive jabs. Ava's launching a new skincare line, Dad announced with pride. All organic. She's partnered with that German lab. What's it called? Vandermoor, Ava supplied with a practiced smile. They do cruelty-free peptide synthesis. It's very niche. Brilliant, Dad beamed. She'll be in vogue by the end of the year. That's amazing, I said, genuinely trying. And Graham, Dad continued, turning to my older brother with the reverence of a high priest, has been named chief of surgery next quarter. At 39. Youngest in hospital history. Congrats, I offered. Graham gave me a cool nod, as if to say yes, I know. Then came the lull. That subtle hush at Carter dinners when the spotlight inevitably swivels to me. The part they dread because they don't understand me, and the part one dread because I hate pretending I care that they don't. And what about you, Maya? Dad asked, slicing into his salmon with clinical precision. Still tinkering? I run a tech company, I said, keeping my tone even. Graham chuckled, not unkindly but with just enough volume to cut. Is it still that medical app thing? It's not an app, it's a platform, I corrected. AI-assisted diagnostics. Ava gave me a pitying smile. Like WebMD? No, I said, sharper than I intended. It's not a website you Google when your elbow hurts. We use machine learning to flag anomalies in diagnostic imaging. Early detection for things like tumors, arterial blockages, internal bleeding. It helps radiologists prioritize high-risk cases. Graham raised a brow. Sounds ambitious. Which is Carter code for cute. But you'll fail. Dad set down his fork. That's when I felt it coming. The shift in the air. The real reason I was invited tonight. Maya, he said slowly, like breaking bad news to a patient, your quarterly draw from the trust will be suspended for the foreseeable future. I blinked. Excuse me. It's not punishment, he said, placing his napkin on the table with too much ceremony. It's simply a matter of financial prudence. The trust wasn't built to support passion projects indefinitely. I wanted to laugh. I'd stopped pulling from the trust almost a year ago. I didn't need their money. Not since Cara landed its second round of funding and tripled its revenue. But they didn't know that. They still thought I was building something fragile. That I was fragile. I understand, I said coolly, even as my chest tightened. You have to do what's best for the family. Ava tilted her head. Are you gonna be okay though? Like rent and everything. I manage, I said. Graham leaned back, arms folded. You know, there's still time to pivot. If you want something more secure, I can connect you with the hospital's innovation team. They're always looking for ideas. I took a sip of my water, willing my pulse to slow down. The old me would have cried on the ride home. The older me would have sent a snarky email 2 days later. But the present me? She was too close to the finish line for petty skirmishes. Because what no one at that table knew, what none of them cared to ask, was that Cara Health had just signed a deal with their hospital's parent company. Graham would soon be running surgery in a hospital powered by my software. And the contract had my name on it. And in 37 minutes, my phone would ring with news that would turn every smirk on this table into stone. The rest of the dinner passed in a fog. Dessert came, some pistachio tart I didn't touch. The server refilled our wine glasses. Dad talked about estate planning. Ava asked if I could help boost her next product launch on LinkedIn, not even realizing I had over 100,000 followers and a verified badge. Then, just as I reached for my purse to leave, my phone buzzed. Daryl. Work incoming call. I glanced down. Normally I'd let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me to answer. Hey Daryl, I'm just wrapping up. Maya, he said, breathless and electric. You're not going to believe this. CNBC just confirmed. The valuation went live. We hit 100 million. Time froze. The candlelight flickered. The table blurred. They want a live interview. Tonight. They're calling you Cariva's breakout CEO. This is happening. I blinked, heart pounding. Thanks, Daryl. I'll call you right back. I hung up. The table stared. What was that? Ava asked, eyes wide. I stood up slowly, slid my phone into my bag, looked at each of them in turn. That was my assistant, I said, smoothing my sleeves. Cara just hit a $100 million valuation. No one spoke. Not even Dad. I smiled, the kind that burns clean. You can read about it in tomorrow's Wall Street Journal. Then I walked out. The ride home was silent, but not the peaceful kind. It was the kind of silence that echoed. I stared out the window, Boston's skyline blurred by the taxi's movement and my own thoughts spinning faster than the tires. My hands were still trembling, though whether it was from rage, adrenaline, or vindication, I couldn't quite tell. They cut me off. Like I was dead weight. Like I hadn't been quietly building something powerful while they sipped cocktails and congratulated each other on mediocrity wrapped in privilege. Graham with his sterile scalpel arrogance. Ava with her product lines she doesn't understand, curated by teams she barely thanks. And my father, the patriarch, the judge, the voice of finality. The man who decided tonight I wasn't family enough to fund anymore. But the universe has timing. And when Daryl called, when those words, $100 million valuation hit the air, I saw it in their eyes. The flicker. The rupture. The moment when the version of me they'd built in their minds, helpless, laughable Maya, cracked and began to collapse. I wasn't just managing. I wasn't just surviving. I had won. And they didn't even see it coming. By the time I got back to my condo in Cambridge, the press release had already gone out. My inbox was a forest fire. Investors, press, podcast invites, VC congratulations. Someone from Forbes Women in Tech had slid into my DMs. LinkedIn was melting. The company Slack was exploding with gifs of fireworks and Oprah screaming, "You get a CAR." I should have popped champagne. But instead, I kicked off my heels, sat on the edge of my bed, and cried. Not sad tears. Not even relief. Just the flood of everything. The years they dismissed me, the nights I coded in silence while they laughed at family dinners about how Maya's still trying to be the next Zuckerberg. The holidays where they bought each other Rolexes and gave me kitchen gadgets like I was some lonely intern who needed purpose. I didn't just build Cariva for success. I built it for proof. And now that I had it, the loneliness was louder than ever. The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail from my father. Maya, I read the news. Congratulations are in order, I suppose. Perhaps we should talk. No, I'm sorry. No acknowledgement of what he said last night. Just diplomacy. As if I were a senator from a rival party and not his daughter. I didn't respond. I spent the next few days submerged in the company. Daryl and I had interviews lined up back to back. We were trending on tech Twitter. Hospitals that ignored my cold emails 2 years ago were suddenly scrambling to set up pilot programs. Investors who passed on us during Series A were now offering to grab coffee to reconnect. I smiled through it all. But my heart hadn't caught up. Not yet. Then came the email from Graham. Subject: Cariva at St. Martha's? I opened it expecting sarcasm. Instead it was polite. Clinical. Maya. We've been hearing murmurs about Cariva entering the diagnostic software space at St. Martha's. I wasn't aware you were involved with the parent network. Let's set up a call. Gee. I stared at it for a full minute before laughing out loud. The audacity. He had no idea. No one had connected the dots yet. Because in all the pitch decks and executive summaries, my name had been strategically minimized. I didn't need to be the face. Cariva was the product. The solution. My name was on the patents, sure, but I let the company be the voice. Still, there was something delicious about it now. Graham, reaching out not as my brother but as a nervous department head who might have to answer to me. I didn't reply. Daryl handled it, professionally, offering a meeting with our integration lead and a disclosure packet. Standard. Distant. I wanted to keep it that way. But the universe wasn't done playing games. A week later, I walked into a boardroom at our downtown office and froze. There, seated at the far end of the table, was Ava. She looked up shocked. Maya. I blinked. What the hell are you doing here? She stood up awkwardly, smoothing her blazer, one of those painfully fashionable, shoulder-padded types. Vandermoor sent me. I'm doing brand strategy for their U.S. market expansion. I didn't know Cariva was the partner. Daryl looked between us, confused. You know each other? She's my sister, I said flatly. Ava's mouth twitched. Half-sister. It was a reflex. She always said that when she felt insecure. Like drawing a bloodline could excuse bad behavior. I wanted to call the meeting off. Wanted to tell her to get the hell out. But I didn't. Instead, I sat across from her and conducted the meeting like she was any other consultant. Professional. Ice cold. She tried at first to bridge the gap. Little jokes, comments like, wow, you've really built something amazing. I gave her nothing. Every time she said, we, in reference to Vandermoor's plan, I reminded her what we at Cariva actually required. When it ended, she lingered by the door. I didn't know, she said quietly. I didn't answer. I mean, I always thought you were smart, Maya. Just different. I am different, I said, grabbing my tablet. That's why I built this and you still live on quarterly allowances and sponsored content. That shut her up. But something about her expression stuck with me. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked lost. And I recognized it. Because I'd been that girl once too. Floating in a family that only saw value in dollars, degrees, and what kind of legacy you could parade at dinner parties. Ava followed me to the elevator. Look, I'm not here to start drama, she said. But if you ever want to, I don't know, talk, I'd like that. We're not kids anymore. I stared at the elevator buttons. You stood by last week while Dad cut me off. You didn't say a word. I didn't know he was going to do that. But you didn't stop it either. She sighed. I wasn't sure you needed the money. That one landed like a punch. I turned to face her fully. You didn't think I needed help, so it was fine to let them humiliate me? I didn't know what you were doing, Maya. You shut us all out. I hit the elevator button. No, Ava. I just stopped letting you all decide what success looked like. The doors opened. I stepped in. She didn't follow. And for the first time in years, I felt lighter. Back in my office, I stood by the window, watching the city bustle below. Somewhere down there, my family still lived in their curated world of appearances and careful alliances. But I'd built something real. Something that mattered. I thought about my mother then. She died when I was 21. Quietly, in a hospital that missed a diagnosis that could have saved her. I remember sitting in that fluorescent-lit hallway, listening to Graham argue with the attending physician. Dad was already on the phone with legal. No one asked me how I felt. No one noticed the way I went silent. The way I started spending nights learning how medical imaging worked. The way I taught myself Python and machine learning models between shifts at my post-grad job. I didn't build Cariva to get rich. I built it because my mother deserved better. I built it because I wanted no other daughter to sit in a hallway and feel like no one was listening. And now, they all had to listen. Ava, Graham, Dad. They could keep their legacies. I was building a revolution. I was back at Le Sable again. Not because I wanted to be, but because the invitation came from my father's personal assistant, stamped with a subject line that read, Carter Family Business, Urgent Discussion Required. The last time they called me to a family meeting, they cut me off like a bad investment. This time, they probably wanted to pretend I'd never been underestimated. Maybe slap my name onto a building or two. Or worse, ask me to share the Cariva playbook so they could brag about mentoring me. I wore white. Sharp, clean, structured. Not for them, for me. I needed the armor. My curls were out, full and unapologetic, and my heels clicked like a countdown as I entered the restaurant and walked toward the same table, the same damn chairs, as if history hadn't already cracked open and flooded the room with new power. Ava was already seated. She stood when she saw me, offering a faint smile I didn't return. Dad was next. No handshake, no hug. Just a nod and an empty gesture toward the seat across from him. And then Graham. Late, of course. Just late enough to make an entrance. He kissed Ava on the cheek, ignored me entirely, and pulled out his chair like he owned the air. I said nothing. No one even opened a menu. Maya, Dad began, folding his hands on the table like a judge preparing for sentencing, we've been discussing the future of Carter Holdings. Of course they had. I wasn't aware I had a role in Carter Holdings, I said, keeping my voice light. You made that clear last time. He didn't flinch. There are no permanent decisions in business. Situations evolve. People grow. Graham leaned in. You've done something remarkable, Maya. Truly. We're proud. That word. Proud. It used to mean everything to me. Now it felt like a trick. A door creaking open after I'd stopped knocking. Let's not waste time, I said. Why am I here? Ava looked between our father and Graham, then cleared her throat. Dad wants to bring you on to the advisory board. Of the foundation. The health division. I laughed. Loudly. Let me get this straight, I said. You want me to join a foundation you control, advise on health strategy, smile for a photo or two, and call it inclusion? No one's asking for photo ops, Dad said, though we both knew better. We're asking you to come home. This isn't home, I snapped. It's a stage. And I'm not your charity case. He exhaled sharply. Maya. Be reasonable. What you've built isn't yours to use. There it was. The first fracture in his composure. His jaw tightened. His hands curled slightly at the edge of the table. Graham tried a softer approach. Look, it doesn't have to be hostile. You're doing real work. That's why we need your insight. No, you want my clout, I corrected. You want the press to write about the Carter family legacy in tech innovation. You want Cariva to be your new jewel. But you don't want me. You never did. Ava looked pained. That's not fair. I turned to her. Do you even remember what you said to me the night Mom died? She froze. You told me maybe now I'd grow up and stop wasting time on coding websites. You called my grief a distraction. Maya, she whispered, eyes wide. I was 19. I was 21. And I had to pack up Mom's room alone. Because you all were too busy managing your image. Dad finally snapped. Enough. This bitterness doesn't suit you. I stood up. You don't get to tell me what suits me. Not anymore. I tossed my napkin onto the table, smoothed my coat, and left before any of them could speak. As I stepped onto the street, the wind hit hard, cold and slicing through the silk of my blouse. But I welcomed it. I needed to feel something other than fury. My phone buzzed. Daryl. You're gonna want to see this. Just sent you a link. I tapped the link. It led to an article just posted 20 minutes ago on a mid-tier medical tech site. Breaking. Cara software to be rolled out at St. Martha's under Carter Foundation grant initiative. My heart stopped. There it was. In black and white. The Carter Foundation was trying to claim they were funding the Cara rollout. That they were responsible for our expansion into St. Martha's. My own brother's hospital. My name wasn't mentioned once. Not as founder. Not as CEO. Just a vague quote from Graham about collaborative innovation with promising startups. They'd blindsided me. Again. I called Daryl immediately. What the hell is this? We just saw it go up, he said rapid fire. Press is scrambling. I already contacted legal. They're misrepresenting the deal. We never attributed rollout to them. It was a vendor agreement. They're co-opting the optics. No, I said, voice shaking. They're trying to erase me. Daryl paused. You want me to hit back? I clenched my jaw. No. I will. I didn't go home. I went straight to the office. Lights on. 10:43 p.m. The cleaning staff startled as I stormed through the lobby. Inside my glass-walled office, I typed like a woman possessed. I wrote a post. Not just a post. A declaration. 1 year ago, I was laughed at during a pitch meeting. 2 years ago, I was told AI couldn't solve radiology bottlenecks. 5 years ago, I was disowned at a dinner table for not becoming a doctor or lawyer. Tonight, someone tried to take credit for the very thing they told me would fail. Let me be clear. Cariva's mission was never built for prestige or headlines. It was built for patients. For doctors buried in images. For women like my mother, who didn't get diagnosed in time. This is for every Black woman in tech who's ever been told she should be quieter, smaller, more agreeable. I'm not. I built this. And I won't let anyone rewrite that truth. I hit post. Within minutes it went viral. Comments flooded in. Women across industries. Healthcare workers. Black founders. Investors. Journalists. By morning, the article was pulled. A clarification posted. But it didn't matter. The truth had already landed. And this time, it was louder than their legacy. 2 days later, I got a call from Graham. I didn't answer. Then another, from Ava. Ignored. And then, the one I didn't expect. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. His voice cracked. Just a little. Maya. I see now I underestimated you. I'm sorry. I know that may be too little, too late. But, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I listened twice. And then I deleted it. Not because I didn't care. But because I was finally free from needing it. They had their money. Their country clubs. Their illusions of control. I had something better. I had the truth. And for the first time in my life that was enough. The invitations started rolling in like clockwork. Industry panels. Black tech founder spotlights. Speaking engagements. A TEDx invite landed in my inbox with a subject line that read, "Your story is power. Will you share it?" Funny. All these people wanted my voice now, when my own family tried to silence it for years. I said yes to exactly one. An exclusive sit-down with women who build, a podcast I'd admired since grad school. No flashy cameras. Just a mic and the truth. When we recorded the episode, I didn't sugarcoat a thing. I spoke about building Cara from scratch, about grief, about watching my family treat ambition like it came with a pedigree. I named no names. But I didn't need to. Anyone paying attention could read between the lines. After the interview aired, the response was overwhelming. Hundreds of messages. A flood of emails from strangers thanking me for speaking up. Venture capital firms that had once ghosted me were now tripping over themselves to offer funding for Phase 2. And then a letter. Not an email. A proper cream-colored envelope slid under the door of my penthouse unit. No return address. Just my name, in neat cursive I didn't recognize. Inside, a folded letter, typed. Maya, there are things you don't know. About your mother. About what happened after she died. About why your father fought so hard to push you away. You think they cast you out for being different. That's not the whole truth. I can't say more in writing. But I think you deserve to know. A friend. There was no signature. No clue. I read the letter 3 times before the realization hit me. This wasn't random. Someone inside the family, inside the circle, wanted me to dig deeper. My hands were shaking again, but it wasn't the same kind of rage. It was something older. Deeper. My mother's death had always felt wrong. Not just the diagnosis delay, or the hospital's cold incompetence. But what followed? How fast the funeral had been arranged. How quickly her belongings were swept out of our house. How her name became this brittle hollow echo in our family. Dad never spoke about her. Graham acted like she'd never existed. Ava tiptoed around the topic like it was radioactive. I never asked why. Until now. I started with the hospital. St. Martha's. I had access now, thanks to the Cariva partnership. Nothing major, just data sharing and workflow integrations, but enough to get my foot into archives. I didn't go through official channels. I used a backdoor we'd built for system audits. Quiet. Untraceable. My mother's chart was under a restricted access lock. That alone was odd. She was never famous. No reason to sequester a decade-old file. But I got in. I wish I hadn't. Because what I found wasn't just a delayed diagnosis. It was a falsified one. The scan from her first ER visit clearly showed signs of the tumor. Obvious ones. Marked in the raw image files but completely omitted from the final radiology report. A different scan, submitted days later, was mysteriously used to override the original. And the attending physician? Dr. Benjamin Carter. My father's cousin. He had signed off on the second scan. The one that cleared her. My pulse roared in my ears. I wasn't just dismissed. I wasn't just humiliated at that dinner. They lied. They covered it up. Someone tampered with her records. Buried the truth. And the man who called me a waste of potential over creme brulee was at the center of it. I printed everything. Took screenshots. Created a backup folder with encrypted access only I could open. Then I booked a private room at the Four Seasons and stared at the ceiling all night. When morning came, I called the one person I hadn't spoken to in weeks. Ava. She picked up on the second ring. Maya. Meet me, I said. No assistants. No dad. Just us. She hesitated. Is everything okay? Not even close. We met at a quiet cafe near the harbor. She arrived in designer sunglasses and tension, her coat cinched too tight, like she knew something was coming but didn't know what. I slid the printouts across the table. She didn't touch them. What's this? Mom's hospital records. And the altered ones. Her hands finally moved. Slowly, she read through them. Her face paled. Her lips parted but no words came. You knew? I asked. No, she said, blinking rapidly. God. I knew something didn't add up, but I thought it was grief, Maya. I thought I was being paranoid. Someone forged that report. Our family buried the original scan. Do you think? Dad. I don't think, I said. I know. His cousin was the attending. He greenlit the override. Ava's voice broke. But why? I think Mom was suing, I whispered. I think she figured it out before the end. And someone stopped it from getting public. Ava went quiet. And then, she did something I didn't expect. She reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. I didn't know what this was, she said. It was in one of Mom's old jewelry boxes. I found it years ago and I was scared to look. I took it. Slipped it into my coat pocket. You kept it all this time? I thought it was sentimental. Like old photos or something. But now. I stood. If this is what I think it is, the entire family's about to burn. Maya. No more half-truths, I said. No more loyalty to people who use us, who bury us. I want the truth, Ava. No matter who it destroys. That night, I plugged in the flash drive. It held video files. Private recordings. A journal, basically. My mother, talking directly into a camera, raw and unedited. She knew. She knew the hospital botched her scan. She suspected her report had been tampered with. She hired an outside radiologist for a second opinion. She documented everything. In one video, recorded just days before her death, she said, "If you're watching this, Maya, it means you found it. You were always the one who asked the hard questions. Who saw through their games. I don't know how much time I have, but if they try to bury me again, don't let them win. You're stronger than all of them. I believe in you." I didn't cry. I burned. With purpose. With clarity. With the fury of a daughter armed with proof. I knew what I had to do. I called my lawyer at 7 a.m. sharp. She didn't sound surprised when I laid it all out. Cariva's stolen credit, the falsified medical records, the video evidence from my mother, and the family's coordinated silence. "You want to go nuclear?" she asked. "I want the truth in the light," I said. She took a slow breath. "Then we start with 2 lawsuits. One civil against St. Martha's for medical negligence. One personal, against Benjamin Carter, for falsifying documentation and obstructing medical care. But Maya, once this goes public, there's no going back. There's nothing left to go back to." Within 48 hours, the legal wheels began to turn. My legal team drafted the official complaints and filed them. Quietly at first. No press release. No big announcement. Just pressure applied where it would hurt the most. Their control. Then I made a call I had waited my entire life to make. I called my father. He picked up on the second ring. "I assume this isn't a courtesy call," he said coldly. "No," I replied. "I just wanted you to hear it from me before the rest of the world does." A pause. "What are you talking about?" "I filed suit. Against Benjamin. Against St. Martha's. I have the scans. The video. Mom's recordings." Her voice clear and damning. "You dragged the family name through the mud for what?" "Vengeance." "No. For her." The silence on the line was different now. Not power. Not anger. Just fear. Cold, paralyzing fear. It smelled like weakness. "You don't understand the damage this will do." "You mean the damage you already did?" He raised his voice, trying to reclaim his footing. "I did what I had to do to protect this family." "By letting your wife die without accountability?" "By erasing the only person who ever truly saw me." "You're overreacting." "No," I cut in. "I'm finally reacting the way I should have years ago. And you're going to watch every bit of this unravel." I hung up. And then I hit send on an email I had drafted days earlier. It was addressed to the Globe, the Boston Herald, MedTech Insider, and Forbes Health. Attached were documents, medical records, timelines, Cariva's original hospital contract, and a video link titled, "My mother was silenced, but her daughter won't be." By noon, it was trending. By evening, it was wildfire. Every anchor, every blog, every podcast. They weren't just talking about Cariva's founder anymore. They were talking about a cover-up. A scandal. A daughter who took on a hospital and her own dynasty and refused to flinch. The story was unavoidable. A black woman in tech who was told she didn't belong, then cut off, dismissed, underestimated, and then rose. And not quietly. The fallout was immediate. St. Martha's released a stiff statement about reviewing past procedures and taking allegations seriously. But the internet wasn't forgiving. Doctors I'd never met wrote me. Nurses shared how they'd been told to stay quiet when they questioned procedures. And families, so many families, wrote about misdiagnosis, about pain that had no outlet until now. Cariva's valuation doubled in 4 days. Investors who once ghosted us were suddenly excited to re-engage. But more than that, people listen now. I was invited to speak on Capitol Hill about AI transparency in healthcare. A university named a fellowship after my mother. The Eleanor Carter Health Justice Initiative. And everywhere I went, people stopped whispering the word resilience. They said power. Not because I played nice. but because I told the truth and refused to look away. And yet, with everything happening around me, what I remember most was the letter. Ava sent it a week after the news broke. It came with a photo. Us, in the garden behind the old house, years before everything shattered. We were maybe 8 and 10. Both barefoot, arms full of flowers, Mom behind us smiling like the sun was inside her. The letter read, "Maya, I should have believed you sooner. I should have stood beside you before the world forced me to. You were always brave, braver than me. I can't undo what I ignored. But I can promise never to ignore again. Thank you for giving Mom her voice back. Love, Ava." I cried for the first time in months. Not from pain. From release. From the weight finally lifting. A few days later, a private courier delivered a handwritten note. From my father. It was brief. Just one sentence. "I see her in you. And I see now what I never deserved to have." I didn't respond. Some ghosts deserve to drift. Cariva went public 6 months later. It was a controlled IPO, tight and purposeful. I rang the bell at the New York Stock Exchange in the same white suit I wore to that cursed family dinner. My curls bigger than ever. My team behind me. My mother in my heart. As the confetti rained down and the cameras clicked, my assistant leaned over and whispered, "We just crossed $250 million. I closed my eyes and breathed in deeply. Not because I cared about the number, but because I remembered sitting at a table where they cut me off. And now, I had built a whole damn empire, with no seat saved for them. Success wasn't the revenge. Silence was. And I'd broken theirs. Forever. If you felt that power shift like we did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories where karma doesn't whisper, it roars. What would you do if your own family tried to erase you, then had to watch you rise anyway? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Turn on notifications so you never miss when hidden revenge turns into public victory. This is Revenge Valley, where silence ends and stories begin.